Hey friends, this is Steven with Make It Rad, back again with the Tundra and the Airstream. And you know, in previous videos I've talked about how the Airstream tows, and I did a video on that. And I've talked about overall the Airstream and the Tundra overall, and I think in a couple of those videos I've mentioned the hitch that I used to pull this with. Now this is an Andersen Weight Distribution Hitch. A little controversial hitch. A lot of people swear by the standard weight distribution bars. This one uses chains. It's a little different. And I'm actually out here. I found the flattest parking lot I could find to dial this in. Now, let's just go over some of the pros of this hitch. You know, they advertise it's lightweight, and it truly is. In total, this is about 60 pounds, including, the whole hitch there, the chains, the brackets, everything. And that, when you're towing with a half ton, is kind of a nice thing to have. I'm always looking out for payload numbers. So having that, less payload, is definitely a win. The anti-sway, this uses this bottom triangle. And that is actually pinned to the hitch ball up there. So that's a tapered sleeve from, it's like 2 inches or 2.5 inches at the top, or maybe around 2 inches at the bottom. It's tapered, and so by pulling on that, there's active brake material in there. So I wouldn't say it has active sway control, but more just sway control. And that's, it's really good. That's one of the pros of this hitch, is the sway control is actually pretty darn good. You see some other hitches that just say, well, friction between, the coupler and the ball is what provides you sway control. Well, this is actually designed brake material, and it's not just the weight of the hitch pushing down on the ball, it's the tension that it creates with the chains pulling on that, trying to pivot that ball in that socket, that actually provides a constant sway control. And depending on the load, it varies, so it's almost like it automatically adjusts for the weight. So that's a great, the anti-sway is really a great feature of this hitch overall. Another pro is it's really easy to use. It's pretty easy to take on and off. You just lift up your jack there, and if you lift it up high enough, those chains will go slack and you can just drop that pin out. Now on my setup, I still have to loosen up these every time. I've got them set at 1 3/4 from the nut to the end of the bolt there. That works pretty well for me. Now, I've adjusted this tighter and a little bit looser, and that seems to be the sweet spot, and that compresses that urethane bushing exactly 1 3/4 as well, total length. So uncompressed, I believe that's right around 2 inches. Compressed, it's 1 3/4, and I also have 1 3/4 thread showing there. Another great benefit of this that I've found is it really doesn't do any form of porpoising like you get with some of the bar distribution hitches, where you go over a bump and it bounces around. This one really just does the initial bump and it stops, which is quite nice. I've actually used some other hitches, I won't name them, going over a certain bridge, and it would just bounce and bounce and bounce for it seemed like a 1/4 mile down the road, and this definitely does not do that. And then another pro is it's virtually silent. Like, this thing might creak a tiny little bit, but it doesn't make any noise when you're going through the campgrounds, when you're turning, going up a hill, down a hill, backing into your camp spot. There's really no noise to account for. And also the build quality I was quite impressed with, and I'm a bit of a perfectionist. You can see there's a little bit of patina. It's not really polished like it was when it showed up. I take this to the coast a lot, so salt water and things, but really it's held up pretty well. Everything has had a nice finish. I've had no issues with any of the hardware. There's no rust on it at all, and I've used this the whole year. So, I mean, maybe a little bit, you can see right there where I've adjusted the height a little bit, where it's rubbed that paint off. There's a little bit of rust on that steel. That's gonna happen. So, quite a long list of pros with this hitch, but it's not perfect. So we'll go over the cons here. Okay, the cons of the Andersen Weight Distribution Hitch. The one thing I will say is the weight distribution portion of this hitch is actually a con compared to some of the others. I mentioned earlier, I can adjust that polyurethane bushing and nothing changes. I can either max this thing out or put it to here, and really it doesn't raise or lift the trailer at all. It doesn't raise or lift the front of the truck at all. And I've gone through the Catskills multiple times, and it really it doesn't really affect it. It's like It does what it does, and then that's it. Now, you can fine tune your adjustment with the nut down here, and I think if you had it set too loose, you could tighten it up. But once it gets to a certain point, and I think Andersen even recommends 1 3/4, when you're sitting static. Once you go past that, it's not going to do anything. It's just going to pull on that spring more, and it's not really going to distribute any more weight. So it's a little tough to dial in. You can see I have all different marks on the hitch from adjusting the height and playing with it. I ended up putting in the top. My truck is right around in between. So Andersen says 1.5 inches you want your truck ball before you hitch up with your level trailer. Mine's right at 1, and so when you put it on the top, that's 2.5. So, right now the total trailer is riding about a 1/2 inch nose high. If I put it down below that, it just runs about 1.5 inches too low. So, and I'm just out here trying to dial this in. I don't have this fully loaded with all of our clothes. There's nothing in the bed of the truck. So I figure a 1/2 inch high in the front overall. Once I throw a little bit more weight in the truck and then weight in the camper, a little bit more weight with all the clothes and things, that'll probably make that up. If it goes down 1/4 inch, that's not such a big deal. Let's come in here. You can see how the truck rides right now. It's pretty darn dialed. The interesting thing about this truck with this hitch is the front end, whether you completely remove the weight distribution, goes up 1/4 inch. And with the weight distribution completely on, it goes down 1/4 inch, but that's it. So it's really hard to tell from measurements. Now the back of the truck is basically goes down 2 inches no matter what you do. It goes down 2 inches, and this has aftermarket suspension. It also has the Elka suspension and RASHD coils as well to help out. So that's all helping control this load. But again, one of the cons of this hitch is the limited weight distribution. Another con is dialing this in. It's a little finicky. You have to have it just right. I came out here to find the most perfect level spot I could do to do this in, and I've been out here probably 2 hours dialing this in. I can't do it at my house. My house just doesn't have a curvy driveway. It's on a hill, and there's all sorts of issues trying to do this at my house, which it could be why it's taken me a little while to dial this in, but I really had to come out here and to the flattest spot I could find to do that. Another con is these frame brackets. I've had to move these back from where I originally put it. There's not a real perfect way to do it. All the installs say just leave it loose, pull it tight, but you want to make sure everything is perfectly dialed and level when you do that, and then you still might have to move it. There is potential for these to damage the frame of your RV. So you've got the upper bolt and the lower bolt, and then you've got that set screw which dimples in the frame. And also that upper bolt and lower bolt, I've seen on some forums where that can start to crunch in as that bracket tilts forward at the bottom, will start to pinch that frame and actually put divots in the frame. So you got to watch that. That's not such an issue with other products, as they just sort of hang the bars from the top. They're not actually pinching it and putting that much stress on that part. Another con is hooking back up. So if you're just backing straight in, straight out, it's no problem. But if you back in like to the left and then you adjust your truck and you're hooking back up to the right, that little triangle will be where you last left it, so it'll be off. There's different methods to do that, but it's just kind of a pain in the butt to pull it tight on one side. What I end up doing is I loosened up both bolts completely, and I just kind of pull it back with the chains and the wrench, and that seems to do the trick. So overall, pretty good hitch. Again, limited weight distribution. Watch those frame brackets, but it does have a lot of pros. So going forward, I'm going to stick this hitch out for this year, see how it does. I don't really want to spend another $600 to $1,000 on a hitch, but I am considering trying a newer unit. I'm considering the B&W Continuum. The challenge with that, with Airstreams in particular, is there's not enough space between the jack and the propane tanks. You have to modify the propane mounts, and the jack mount, you have to cut some stuff off of there, which I don't want to do. And I'm also considering the EaseLift TR3. It's a bar weight distribution hitch, but it also has a little collar that you can adjust the sway control. My challenge with that one is I don't know what setting to put on the sway control. I wish it was just sort of like it did it by its own, like this one does. So I've got another big trip coming up this year with this hitch. I will likely do a follow-up. It's the longest trip of the year, which is why I came out here to really try to dial this in before we get going. So give you kind of an overall look. We are sitting a 1/2 inch high on the front of the Airstream, and the truck is basically sitting wherever it always does, whether whether the hitch is completely tight or what setting that hitch is in, whether it's on the lowest setting or the top setting, the truck pretty much sits the way it does. So great hitch, has advantages, has its disadvantages, but again, what I was looking for was lightweight, good sway control. I think I'm within the limits of the weight distribution. We'll see once I load it up. This is going to be the biggest trip of the year, and then we'll be good to go. So if you enjoy this content, please like and subscribe, and I appreciate it. We'll see you soon.